Well, welcome all. Today I'd like to talk a little bit more about my travel gear, and what's prompted me to do that is that I've come across fairly regularly on videos and other places commentary on how to first carry a Blackmagic Pocket 4K, and also questions about gimbals. There's still problems that people seem to have with balancing the Crane 3S for some reason. They probably haven't seen my earlier video about how you go about ensuring that things are going to be balanced properly and that they work well, but that's beside the point. What I want to do today is show the packages that I use for my camera and my gimbal when I go out and about, especially going bush. I've shown the bag that I've got earlier in the previous video, but I haven't shown the bag that I've sort of put together for the gimbal itself. The bag is basically an old Acer 19-inch laptop that died on me, and I've just used the bag now for the gimbal. I've taken the pouch that was on the top off, just took the all the threading off there, made it a little bit smaller to carry around. But this recently did a trip out bush when we went camping for a week, and they were in the back of my four-wheel drive. They work perfectly, and what I wanted to do today was just show how easy it is to assemble the camera and the gimbal no matter where you are from a packed condition, and to just demonstrate that it's really easy to do if you put your mind to it. And also want to just talk about slight differences between gimbals and glide cams. This is sort of a topic that sort of comes up fairly often in some discussion groups as to what's better, the glide cam or a gimbal, and some prefer the glide cam and others the gimbal. And I just want to sort of go through a couple of points about gimbals which I think are an improvement or something better than a glide cam, which I have tried and had incredible trouble getting balancing and so forth. So I'll talk about that at the end part, but I'll show you how I put these things together. And this is not supposed to be a speed trial or anything like that. It's just what I do, and you'll get an idea of how quick and easy it is to put together both your camera once it's been disassembled and the gimbal itself as well. So I'll just do that. I'll put this aside for the moment. And as I've shown before, the camera just sort of sits in a bag like that, disassembled. I take it out. I've got my microphone, I've got the handle, which I won't use this time, and my batteries. So all I really need to do with this is connect always not easy when you want to do it. Okay, so the microphone's connected. Doesn't take all that much. Two batteries that I use for the Blackmagic monitor, and one MPF 970 to power the camera. That is now how long it takes me to set up the camera from a pretty much disassembled part. And for the gimbal, it sits in the bag like that. The motors and the plate that holds the camera and that come off separately, as you can see there. I keep a tea towel there just so I don't scratch the bits and pieces. And basically I've taken the tripod off, the side handle that I've shown before, and the gimbal itself resides like that. That's all I have to break it down to. So when I put the tripod back on, that's ready to go. The handle with the NATO clamp just slides on, locks in, and then generally what I do is I just unlock that and lock that. And because there's some markings on the Manfrotto plate that came with the gimbal, and I've attached the Arca Swiss plate that I've spoken about before, that just slides in, and all I have to do is put it up to the known mark, lock it, undo the yaw arm. I've got the motors now connected, so all that works fine. Then I just have to put the camera in place, which is always easier to do when I'm able to actually see what I'm doing, but we'll do it anyway like this. Okay, unlock the yaw. So it's pointing a bit down. That was pretty close. Okay, that's where it needs to go. Unlock the pitch arm or the tilt arm, and then find the button. And I think, there we go. She's now on and working perfectly. That's all you have to do when it comes to packing and unpacking the gimbal itself. So every time I go out bush, that's what I do. Have it in the bag when I'm going somewhere, and quite often what I do is I just, once the gimbal's been put together, I just sort of put it on a soft part in the car and leave it, and nothing sort of seems to go out of balance. It's always really good. You can see it works fine. So that's all I really need to do with that, because the camera's balanced perfectly. The gimbal has a perfect balance point where I can attach the camera, and it's only a few minutes to put it up. Now, the difference between a gimbal like this and say a Glidecam is, first off, the Glidecam does take quite some time to balance. When I got the gimbal, as I mentioned in an earlier video, it took me about 15 minutes or something like that to get this thing balanced perfectly, because the camera was already balanced itself. Now, Glidecams, you can take up to an hour or more. The Glidecam that I had, which was quite a cheap and nasty thing, but nonetheless, I could get eventually balanced, but it took hours and hours and hours. Now, it's possible that some of the better ones, the Glidecam brand name, is a little bit easier to balance because of the adjustments that you've got, but it still takes an awful long time to balance. And if anybody's watched the balancing examples on YouTube, you'll see that most people will have some sort of a stand on which you put the handle so that you can get it balanced properly, rather than trying to hold in your hand constantly. Whereas with a gimbal, you've got a tripod, and so you can put it on a table, on the ground, anywhere, and balance it easily. The other thing is with the Glidecams is any minor change. If you just happen to change the angle of the flag on a mat box, it'll take the balance out. If you want to zoom out, like I can with this, I'll just show you. The lens comes out a small amount with this particular lens, some even more. The balance isn't gone. I can still use the gimbal exactly as it was before, perfectly balanced, because the motor is capable of taking that change. You cannot do that with a Glidecam. The moment you do something different to it, you have to go and rebalance. And if you have to do that in the field, it can be a right royal bugger to actually do the changes in balancing. Most gimbals nowadays have a powerful enough motor that you can do minor adjustments to it without affecting the ability of the gimbal to manage the camera. And it's issues like that that I think make it far superior to a Glidecam itself. Glidecams are certainly cheaper, you don't need batteries, but the reality is that the camera that you use, the audio gear that you use, the monitor that you might use, all of those require power anyway. So you're carrying batteries with you regardless. So I think it's a nebulous statement to say that, oh, you don't need electronics or anything with it. It doesn't really make that much of a difference. And the other thing is too that with Steadicams and so forth in play, traditionally they used a Glidecam, a rather large one. And if you have a look at any of those videos on balancing those, they are really critical. Try to get both static and dynamic balance with a Glidecam. Really does take a bit of effort and knowledge and practice to get it right. Nowadays you'll see the Steadicam vests being adopted by gimbal users, and they're putting gimbals onto the Steadicam vest itself and getting great results. So they're getting really good smooth movements, able to walk without the up and down movement that I showed earlier. And you know, it's a changing environment. There are still a lot of diehards who like the Glidecam for their own reasons, and that's fair enough. But I think anyone who's coming into the gimbal world, wanting to look at something to balance their camera while they're moving about, my view is that a gimbal is far, far better. It's easy to learn. It'll give you the same sorts of looks that you get with a Glidecam once you practice and understand how to use it. Some people say that the Glidecam is more organic. I don't really believe that. I think it's just a matter of the user learning how to move with either a Glidecam or a gimbal, that they'll get smoother results, the sort of natural looking results. And that's really sort of up to practice, practice and practice. So really that's all I've got to say today. I just wanted to show you my little setup and how it gets together, and how I put it to use, and the simplicity and ease of actually putting it together without having to do rebalancing and so on, to dispel a few myths that seem to be still perpetuating around in the interwebs and whatever. So on that note, I'll say cheers and hope to see you again.